Through goes... But here comes Sebastian!
Banana.
Hamilton sees him coming! It's a late lunge by...
Must be the...
Simply...
Lando, this is Zach.
Every Ferrari fan sit up straight. He said he hopes their time will come this year, or as soon as possible. And he acknowledged, plainly and openly, that time has passed. He is not a kid anymore. He knows it. The clock is ticking, and he is not pretending otherwise. Now, why does that matter so much? Because in the world of Formula One, drivers in their peak years are the most valuable commodity on the planet. Leclerc is in that window right now. He has proven his speed. He has proven his racecraft. He has shown he can battle at the front under pressure. What he has not yet is at Ferrari without a title. You have to ask the question, how much longer is a driver of this caliber going to wait? This is where the story gets genuinely fascinating. Leclerc did not say he was leaving. He did not issue an ultimatum. But what he did do was frame things very carefully. He said he wants to win. He said time has passed. And then he wrapped it in the language of hope. Hope that this year brings results. Hope that the breakthrough comes soon. In professional sport, when elite competitors start talking about hope rather than certainty, it tells you something important. It tells you they are aware the situation is fragile. Let us zoom out and look at the bigger picture of what is happening in Formula One in 2026. This is a regulation reset year. Ferrari emerged early as one of the more credible threats to Mercedes, which was genuinely encouraging. There were signs that this new era, with its different technical rules and new power unit regulations, might finally provide the platform Ferrari has been desperately searching for. But then McLaren showed up, and Oscar Piastri, in one of the most impressive drives of the early season, reminded everyone that McLaren is not going to simply hand anybody second position, let alone a title fight. Leclerc himself acknowledged this at Suzuka. He said he expected McLaren to be right back in contention. He called them a very, very, very strong team. 3 veries. That is not hyperbole. That is Leclerc being brutally honest about the competition level his team is facing. So Ferrari is not fighting one rival. They are potentially fighting 2. And while the car has shown promise, the gap between showing promise and winning championships in Formula One is enormous. We have seen that story play out before. We have seen Ferrari be competitive, be exciting, give fans hope, and then fall short when the moments that matter most arrive. Leclerc knows that pattern probably better than anyone. Now here is where things get really interesting from a strategic and psychological standpoint. The driver market in Formula One never truly sleeps, but in 2026 it is particularly chaotic. There are big names whose futures remain uncertain. Teams are always positioning themselves, always looking ahead, always calculating. And for a driver like Leclerc, who is clearly one of the top 3 or 4 talents on the current grid, there will always be interest from other teams if the situation at Ferrari continues to stall. His manager, Nicolas Tot, has made it clear in the past that Ferrari needs to provide Leclerc with championship-caliber machines. Exactly what makes the tension in his words so powerful. Because it is not the frustration of someone who never cared. It is the ache of someone who cares enormously and has not yet been able to achieve what they set out to achieve together. 8 Grand Prix victories since 2019 is not a small number. But in the context of a 7-year partnership where the goal was always a world championship, 8 wins across that span represents a gap between what was hoped for and what was delivered. The 2022 season showed the world what was possible when Ferrari had a competitive car and Leclerc was brilliant throughout. But that season slipped away, in part due to team decisions, strategic errors, and reliability problems. The wound from that year has never fully healed. Now we are in 2026, and Ferrari is once again asking its fans, and that brings us back to those words at Suzuka. Time has passed. I hope our time will come this year, or as soon as possible. Read those sentences carefully. They are the words of a man who is patient, yes, but who is not infinitely patient. They are the words of someone who loves where he is, but who also understands the brutal arithmetic of a racing career. The peak years are finite. The opportunities to win a championship are rare. You cannot get those seasons back once they are gone. Ferrari stands at a pivotal moment in its modern history as well. The team has not won a Constructors' Championship since 2008. That drought has lasted nearly 2 decades. For a team with Ferrari's history, its heritage, its passion, and its resources, that absence from the very top is a wound that runs deep. Leclerc represents their best chance in a long time to end that drought, but he cannot do it alone. The car, the strategy, the development curve, all of it has to come together. The next several races in 2026 are going to be enormously revealing. If Ferrari can close the gap to Mercedes, if they can fight at the front consistently rather than in flashes, then the belief that Leclerc expressed at Suzuka can grow into something real. If the gap instead remains or widens, then the questions around town. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, this is the place where we dig into the biggest stories in Formula One and give you everything you need to understand what is actually going on beneath the surface. Today's topic is one that has been building for weeks, and after some very revealing comments from McLaren's CEO, we now have a clearer picture of what might be coming. We are talking about Max Verstappen's future, where he ends up next, and why the man running one of the hottest teams on the grid basically just pointed him straight at the silver arrows. Before we get into all of that, though, let me set the scene for you, because context is everything here. We are in the early stages of the 2026 Formula One season, and it is a completely different world compared to what we saw just a couple of years ago. New regulations have come in, and the competitive order has been completely reshuffled. Mercedes have come out of the blocks like a different team entirely, picking up every single pole position and every race win available through the first 3 rounds of the year. Meanwhile, over at Red Bull, things are looking rather grim. Verstappen himself is sitting 9th in the Drivers' Championship after 3 rounds, with just 12 points on the board. For a 4-time world champion, that is a brutal reality check. Now here is where it gets really interesting. Verstappen's contract with Red Bull runs until the end of 2028. On paper, that sounds like he is locked in for the foreseeable future. But if you dig a little deeper, there is reportedly a performance-related exit clause buried in that deal. That little detail changes everything. If Red Bull continues to struggle, that clause could become the most important piece of paper in the entire sport. And that is before we even mention the fact that Verstappen himself has been dropping some pretty heavy hints about his state of mind. He has been vocal about his dissatisfaction with the new 2026 regulations, going as far as calling them fundamentally wrong. He has talked about a lack of enjoyment, and in the world of Formula One, Oscar Piastri, the greatest pairing in the sport, both on and off the track. He said McLaren has long-term deals with both drivers, and that there is absolutely no intention of replacing either one of them. Now stop and think about that for a second. Brown is not just paying lip service here. This is a man who genuinely believes in what he has built. Norris has been with McLaren through the lean years, through the rebuilding phase, through the climb back to competitiveness, and now he is one of the top drivers. And Brown, speaking purely from his own perspective as someone who follows the sport closely, said that if he had to bet his money on somewhere, he would put it on Mercedes. Let that sink in. The CEO of one of Formula One's leading teams, a guy with deep connections across the paddock and a very good read on how these things play out, is pointing directly at Mercedes as Verstappen's most likely next stop. And when you look at the evidence, it honestly makes a lot of sense. Mercedes right now are the dominant force in 2026. As we mentioned, they have swept the first 3 rounds completely. They have come back from a couple of difficult seasons where they were chasing Red Bull's rear wing, and now they appear to have nailed the new regulations. The car is quick, the infrastructure is world-class, and the resources they have available are unmatched by most other teams in the sport. Think about what a pairing of Verstappen and Mercedes would look like. You would essentially be combining the most naturally talented driver of his generation with arguably the most successful constructor in the modern era. From a pure performance standpoint, it would be almost unfair to the rest of the grid. And for Verstappen, if his issue is genuinely about wanting a competitive car and wanting to enjoy driving again, then Mercedes in this current form might just be exactly what he is looking for. There is his love for the sport if the car becomes more competitive. Formula One has a way of producing unexpected twists when you least expect them. There is also the question of what happens at Red Bull. The team built an empire around Verstappen. Losing him would be a seismic event for them, not just competitively, but from a commercial and branding perspective as well. You can bet they will be doing everything in their power to keep him, whether that means improving the car, adjusting his deal, or something else entirely. Red Bull are not going to just let one of the greatest drivers in the sport's history walk out the door without a fight. And on the Mercedes side, they have their own roster considerations to think about. Their current drivers are performing. Bringing in someone like Verstappen, with his reputation and his demands, is not a simple plug-and-play situation. There are contracts, egos, team dynamics, and long-term planning to navigate. Nothing in Formula One is ever as straightforward as it looks from the outside. But here is the bottom line. The narrative has shifted. A few months ago, this conversation was mostly background noise. Now, with Red Bull struggling, Verstappen expressing frustration publicly, his engineer heading to McLaren, and Zak Brown essentially confirming that the most likely destination for Verstappen would be Mercedes, the story has moved from hypothetical to genuinely possible. We are watching one of the most fascinating driver market stories in years unfold in real time. And honestly, that is part of what makes Formula One so compelling right now. The racing on track is extraordinary, with these new regulations producing incredible action, and off-track, the political and strategic maneuvering is equally gripping. The question is not really if Max Verstappen leaves Red Bull anymore. Based on everything we are seeing and hearing, the question is becoming when and where. And right now, if you had to put your money somewhere, the answer to that second question is looking more and more like a certain famous silver garage. So what do you think? Is Verstappen genuinely going to end up at Mercedes? Would that be the best thing for him and for the sport? Drop your thoughts down in the comments below, because I genuinely want to hear your take on this one. If you found this breakdown useful, smash that like button, because it helps more people find this content. And if you want to stay across everything that is happening in the world of Formula One this season, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. We will see you in the next one. Formula One has always been a sport built on conflict, drama, and larger-than-life personalities. And right now, then came 2025. Declining performance on track, serious off-track issues, and a paddock that had been shifting beneath Red Bull's feet for some time. Within days of the British Grand Prix last season, Horner was gone. The announcement shocked the entire F1 world, and the ripple effects are still being felt today. Now here is where things get genuinely fascinating. Horner reportedly secured a multi-million-pound exit package that actually gives him the freedom to return to Formula One in 2026. And the team that his name has been most closely linked to? Alpine. Reports have surfaced that Horner has been involved in a bid to acquire a significant stake in the French team. We are talking about a 24% shareholding that was previously held by Otro Capital. If that deal goes through, Christian Horner could be back in the paddock before the year is out. Let that sink in for a second. The man who was pushed out of one of F1's most powerful positions could be walking back in through a completely different door in a matter of months. And this is exactly where Zak Brown enters the conversation in the most unexpected way. Speaking with assembled media earlier this week, the McLaren CEO did not mince his words. He called Horner a great personality for the sport. He described him as a great operator. He acknowledged that his track record speaks for itself, and he said flat out that he would be shocked that translated directly into drama that kept millions of viewers coming back week after week. Right now, by his own suggestion, Brown feels that strong personality energy has dipped, and he is essentially saying, bring it back. But let us not get so caught up in the Horner story that we miss the other massive thread running through all of this. Because the situation at Red Bull itself is staggering. Think about what that team has lost in an incredibly short window of time. Adrian Newey, the design genius who is widely regarded as one of the greatest technical minds the sport has ever produced, has moved to Aston Martin. Jonathan Wheatley, a long-serving and highly respected figure within the team, has also departed. Helmut Marko, the man who built Red Bull's driver program and was a cornerstone of their culture for decades, is also gone. And now comes the news that Gianpiero Lambiase, Max Verstappen's race engineer, and a man who has been absolutely central to the Dutchman's championship campaigns, will be heading to McLaren no later than 2028. That is a stunning list of departures. It represents a fundamental transformation of everything that made Red Bull the dominant force they were. So who is left to pick up the pieces? That responsibility falls on Laurent Mekies, the 48-year-old Frenchman who stepped in to replace Horner and has been tasked with steering this race. Faces a similar challenge, not building from scratch, but reorganizing and refocusing what is already there. And Brown was firm on one point: do not write Red Bull off. Given that this is a team that was genuinely dominant until not very long ago, there is serious depth in that organization. The results right now make for uncomfortable reading. Just 16 points from 3 Grand Prix weekends as things stand, with a new power unit developed in partnership with Ford still finding its feet. But these things take time. Nobody who understands how Formula One teams work is going to dismiss Red Bull as a spent force. They have the infrastructure, they have the resources, and they have the institutional knowledge that comes from years of winning at the highest level. Mekies just needs time and the space to redirect all of that energy. Now let us zoom out for a moment and think about what all of this actually means for Formula One heading into the rest of 2026 and beyond. We are at a genuinely fascinating inflection point. McLaren are currently the team to beat, sitting at the top of the pile and clearly feeling the confidence that comes with that position. Zak Brown is talking about rivals in a way that only a man at the front of the grid can. He is generous about Mekies, supportive of a Horner return, and clearly feeling very good. 4% stake have created a very unusual situation. Horner getting involved there would not just bring a high-profile name back to the grid, it would completely reshape the narrative around that team. Interestingly, reports have also emerged suggesting that Toto Wolff has entered the bidding for that same Alpine stake, which means you could potentially have two of the biggest personalities in modern Formula One competing for control of a team. If that is where things are heading, then the next chapter of this sport just got a whole lot more interesting. And that is maybe the bigger point underneath all of this. Formula One's appeal has always been about more than just where he is back at the center of it all once again, just wearing different colors. Zak Brown saying he would welcome that return is more than just a nice quote for a media session. It is a signal that even the people who competed hardest against Horner recognize what his presence brings to the ecosystem. The sport is better with strong personalities. It is better with rivalries. It is better when team bosses give you something to talk about beyond pure lap times. And right now, Formula One is in a period of significant change, with 2026 regulations reshaping the technical landscape and several major teams navigating serious internal transitions. The last thing the sport needs is for the drama to dial down. So watch this space very closely. The Horner situation is not resolved yet. The Alpine ownership question is still live. Red Bull's rebuild under Mekies is only just beginning. And McLaren, under Brown, is enjoying its moment at the top but knows better than anyone that in Formula One nothing stays the same for long. This is a sport that rewards obsessive attention because the stories never stop developing. Whether Christian Horner walks back into this paddock or not, one thing is absolutely certain. Formula One in 2026 is shaping up to be one of the most compelling chapters the sport has had in a long time. And we are going to be here covering every single twist as it happens. If you want to stay right on top of all of it, make sure you are subscribed because things are moving fast and you do not want to miss what comes next. Formula One just got a whole lot more interesting, and if you haven't been paying attention to what's happening inside the McLaren garage, you're genuinely missing one of the most fascinating power shifts in the entire paddock. Today, we are breaking down everything you need to know about the major Formula One paddock, and now he is heading to Woking. That is not a small deal. That is a seismic deal. Now, before the rumor mill takes over completely, let's clarify exactly what role Lambiase is stepping into, because this is where things get really interesting. McLaren CEO Zak Brown has confirmed that Lambiase will join the team as Chief Racing Officer. And here is the critical detail that a lot of people initially got wrong when the news first broke. He will be reporting directly to team principal Andrea Stella, not replacing him, not sitting above him, reporting to him. This distinction matters enormously, and we are going to come back to why in a moment. Lambiase will not arrive at McLaren immediately either. His contract with Redbull runs out no later than 2028, which means the team is playing a long game here. They have secured a commitment, they have made a public statement of intent, and they are willing to wait because they know the value of what they are getting. When a team of McLaren's caliber is prepared to wait up to 2 years for someone, that tells you everything you need to know about how highly they rate this individual. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, because when the news first leaked before the official announcement, the narrative being pushed was that Lambiase was being brought in as a potential successor to Stella as team principal. There were also whispers that Stella himself was considering a return to Ferrari, the team where he spent over a decade and helped secure world championship titles with both Michael Schumacher and Kimi Räikkönen. Stella also served as race engineer to Fernando Alonso during his Ferrari years, so his connection to the Scuderia runs deep. But here is what actually happened. Those rumors were shot down firmly and clearly. Stella is staying at McLaren. His role is responsibility simultaneously. He is the team principal overseeing the entire organization. He runs the racing operations day to day, and he also contributes significantly in a technical director capacity, playing a major role in the car's development and direction. That is an extraordinary amount of responsibility for one person to carry, and Brown acknowledged it openly. Asking someone to be exceptional across all three of those domains at the same time is, as Brown put it, a tall order. Think about it from a purely logical standpoint. Formula One teams at the very highest level are enormous operations. We are talking about hundreds of engineers, strategists, mechanics, data analysts, commercial staff, and support personnel all working in coordination. The complexity of managing an organization of that scale, while simultaneously being deeply involved in technical decision-making and day-to-day race operations, is almost incomprehensible. Spreading that load more intelligently is not a sign of weakness in Stella. It is a sign of maturity and intelligence in the way McLaren is building their structure. Lambiase coming in to take ownership of the racing operations side effectively frees Stella up to apply his energy and focus where it is most needed, without burning himself out trying to cover every single base. And if you look at how other top teams have evolved their structures over time, this actually makes a lot of sense. The team principal role itself has transformed significantly over the years, with most top teams now having both a CEO figure and a team principal working in tandem. We are now seeing that evolution continue one level deeper, with specialized leadership roles emerging beneath the team principal. Brown describes Stella as the glue that holds everything together. That word choice is intentional and meaningful. Glue does not do any one specific job. Glue connects everything else and makes sure nothing falls apart. That is the role Stella plays at McLaren, and it is arguably the most important role in the entire structure. Now let's zoom out for a second and think about what this signing says about McLaren's ambitions and their confidence in where they are headed. You do not go out and secure one of the most respected figures in the sport unless you are building towards something substantial. McLaren is not in survival mode. They are not patching holes. They are constructing a machine designed for sustained dominance, and every decision they make reflects that mentality. Interestingly, it does reinforce just how serious McLaren was about landing this signing. They went after him with intent, and they got him. The McLaren that exists today is dramatically different from the one Zak Brown walked into back in 2016. By his own account, the environment he found was cold, dark, and deeply unhappy. The culture was fractured, with suspicion and conspiracy theories creating an us versus them dynamic between different parts of the organization. The commercial department felt disconnected from the racing operation. The drivers were unhappy, partners were dissatisfied, and the walls were painted in colors that somehow perfectly captured the miserable atmosphere inside. What Brown has overseen since then is a genuine cultural transformation, and he speaks about it with clear pride. The team now has around 1,400 people who understand how their individual contributions connect to what happens on track on a Sunday. The finance team feels like they contributed to a victory. The commercial department gets energized by a weight-saving exercise because they can see how their work feeds directly into performance. That level of collective ownership is rare, and it is extremely difficult to manufacture. It has to be cultivated over years. Brown is also careful not to be naive about it. He acknowledges that politics still exist within the organization because they exist within every human organization at this scale. But his claim is that those politics are minimal compared to what they once were, and compared to what exists at other teams in the paddock. His pointed criticism of what he described as a toxic environment at Red Bull, which he credited for driving talented people away from that team, suggests he sees culture as a genuine competitive advantage and not just something nice to talk about in press conferences. This matters directly for the Lambiase signing. If Lambiase, that is not just talking about filling a role, that is talking about succession planning. That is talking about building leadership infrastructure that will sustain the team through multiple championship cycles and across whatever regulatory changes and competitive challenges come next. The bigger picture here is that McLaren is making every move with one eye on the immediate present and one eye firmly fixed on a future they are actively designing. They retain their championship-winning structure. They reinforced it with one of the most experienced racing minds in the sport, and they built the whole thing on a cultural foundation that is designed to keep talented people wanting to stay and give their best. For any team to consistently challenge for championships in Formula One, they need technical brilliance, strategic clarity, driver talent, and a culture that channels all of those things in the same direction at the same time. McLaren is ticking every one of those boxes right now, and with the Lambiase addition formally confirmed, they have sent a message to every other team on the grid. This is not a team managing the present. This is a team building a legacy. And whether you support McLaren or not, whether you loved watching Lambiase and Verstappen at Red Bull, or you're a die-hard fan of a completely different outfit, you have to sit back and respect the ambition and the intelligence of what is being assembled here. The Formula One landscape in 2026 and beyond is going to look very different from what we have grown accustomed to. New regulations, shifting competitive dynamics, fresh challenges from teams that are themselves evolving and investing. And right in the middle of all of it, McLaren is quietly and deliberately stacking the deck in their favor. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure you subscribe, because we are tracking every development inside the Formula One paddock and breaking down what it all actually means for the championship picture. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the Lambiase signing is the final piece McLaren needed, or is there still something missing before they can claim true dominance? Let's talk about it.